Hi guys, welcome back to All Bases Covered with Mackenzie Alexander. I am so excited for today's episode as usual. Also, I know a lot of people watching. It's finals week and that just got over, so I hope everyone did good on their finals if you're watching and you're a student in college or whatever it may be. But let's get right into today's guest. So today's guest is Justin Loer. Originally, he just transferred from Xavier not too long ago, which people think that sometimes it's in New Orleans, but it's Xavier in Ohio. So complete different side of the country, the North. He's a left-handed pitcher. He was in the Big East Conference, so it's very different coming from the Big East Conference to the SEC. So we're going to really talk about that with him. Overall, he has a great story, when it comes to mental health and just being a student athlete and balancing it all. So I'm super excited. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Justin Loer.
Hi, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for coming on. How's your day?
Good. It was just a normal day at home. I don't have any finals, lucky for me, unlike some normal students. But yeah, I have all online classes, so it's pretty laid back. So I've been home for like a week already now, so it's been good.
Yeah, I bet that's nice because finals suck.
Yeah, for
Do
sure.
you have finals like at Xavier, or is that just?
Yeah, it's completely different. Like at Xavier, it's a very rigorous materials and I had like 3 finals, 4 finals, a couple papers, and here it's just like, okay, you're taking a couple finals online, and it's really like not hard at all, like completely different. So I'm not complaining at all.
Yeah,
But
no.
yeah,
It's crazy too because you would think LSU, like obviously bigger school has more top institution like kind of name around it, but you would think it'd be a little harder. Personally, I think LSU is really not that hard.
yeah, I agree for sure.
Which I don't know if I had told you, but I also transferred. So I
Mhm.
transferred from a school in Michigan called Grand Valley. I don't know if you know where
Okay,
that's at.
no, I don't.
Yeah, it's like a smaller school like Xavier too. So I understand what it's like to be a transfer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, awesome. So you transferred this season to LSU, and we talked about kind of you already, you wanted to transfer, you were looking, whatever, you didn't know where you're going yet, kind of thing. Kind of walk me through, was LSU always a choice that you maybe were considering, or was it just something came up?
Yeah. When I was going in the portal, I had a few like teams in mind that I thought about. Like we talked about this before, like South Carolina, like their pitching coach. I knew like out of high school, I was like, that'd be great, like to have a reunion with him, and a couple teams that I just thought would be cool to go there, but none of them were really on the level of LSU. It was like, okay, now I'm in the portal and all these schools are reaching out. And then, oh my gosh, like I look at my phone, I get a phone call and it says Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm like, no way, right? Like, there's no way. And then I answer the phone and it's Jay Johnson. And I'm like, wow, this is unreal, like at a whole different level than I ever knew because, you're at a small school and you're not really sure who knows you, like if people even know who you are. And obviously, like people have taken notice, but I honestly didn't expect that whatsoever.
Yeah, I want to talk about kind of, obviously at Xavier, you were like the underdog, like you like were very well known. It was a school where, obviously you were a main pitcher, things like that. And going from that kind of school, like in a big East Conference to an SEC, you obviously knew that wasn't going to be the case, obviously, because it's complete ballpark, just a different world. So when you received that phone call from Jay, what was your first kind of, I guess, thought and what were your emotions?
Yeah, it was kind of like I said, it was like shock. It's like out of high school, I wasn't really like I wasn't recruited like really at all. The only reason I went to Xavier was because I thought I could play right away, and I joke and I say to people that I would have been cut in 2 weeks if I came to LSU as a freshman. Like I was nowhere near I had the potential, but I wasn't there yet. I wasn't ready for college baseball, and when I got that call, I was like, okay, I'm ready now. Like this is kind of like my opportunity to kind of prove to people that I'm ready for this opportunity. And like you said, the Big East Conference, it's not really a baseball conference like the SEC is, and I was ready to kind of challenge myself, making the big step to the premier college baseball conference.
Yeah. So you mentioned something really interesting. You just said that you think that you would have been cut if you would have tried LSU. going out of your senior year.
Yeah.
So during high school, did you play all 4 years?
Yeah, I did. I just wasn't people like Minnesota is not like the premier baseball I mean sort of like Michigan, it's cold, you can't play outside. You can't play outside until April sometimes. Most of the time it's like May. You can still get that 2 feet of snow in April. It's just random. I mean, you know what I mean, but this is a hockey, state, and
Yep.
the summer sports
Yeah.
are not the summer sports aren't, premier. And coming out of Minnesota, it's like, I was a late bloomer for sure. And, these premier programs in the South are not recruiting people from Minnesota out of high school. So, yeah, that's what I always say that I wasn't as good. I was a really skinny kid, and I wouldn't be ready for a school like LSU at that point.
It's funny because so many people that I talk to that are from like the South, they don't understand really what the world is like in the North, like how it's such a different world. Like for those who don't know, like baseball, like you can be playing a championship game in snow. Like there's a possibility.
Oh yeah.
Also, like hockey and wrestling are the main sports in the North.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a thing in the South. Is wrestling a thing?
I'm not sure. LSU doesn't have a wrestling team, so
yeah.
Probably not. I mean, people don't understand. There's more people at hockey games than there are at the high school football games.
Yeah.
That's a normal occurrence. Like football's behind hockey, as crazy as that sounds. It's pretty nuts. Yeah.
It is. So like, I don't know. If you get it, you get it. But then again, like I try to explain it to some people at LSU, and they're like, "Oh, I'm never going to the North." But like, it's fun. Like I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, the people are great. It's the people are nice. It's the Midwest, like inviting culture. I think people don't understand until you live there. I think some of my teammates, for sure that some of my teammates are they play in the Northwoods League, which is in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and they live there for the whole summer, and then they come back and they're like, dude, you were right. Like the people are amazing. Like sometimes they're too nice. Like I'm like, yeah, I could see how you think that being from the North. Yeah.
So we talked about kind of the Vanderbilt game. That was a big career high, Xavier.
Yeah.
It was a regional game. Kind of, you said that there was a lot of heightened emotion there, and it was exciting. So kind of walk me through what made it so exciting.
Yeah, so it's probably something to tell my grandkids about for sure. So obviously Xavier, versus Vanderbilt, it's Big East versus SEC, like I mentioned before. We were not favored. I think they were the 4th team in the country. Xavier were like good team, just not like at that level at that point, or thought about at that level. So we're winning. It's the 8th inning. I'm the closer, by the way. So I came in the 8th inning. Gave up 1 hit, struck out the last guy of the inning. I'm all hype. I'm screaming coming off the mound. It's like, big time moment, right? And all of a sudden I come up for the 9th inning. It's still 2-1. I'm like, all right, I'm about to, pitch the last 3 outs and eliminate the 4th team in the country. And they're a home park. It's like big time. I'm all locked in. I throw my last pitch of warm-ups, and I get the ball back from the catcher. And all of a sudden the umpire walks up to me. He goes, "You got to get off the field. Like there was this lightning." And I'm like, "Really?" I look up at the sky. It's clear skies. It's sunny. I'm like, what do you mean lightning? So we go back. I'm sitting in the dugout. They're like, "All right, you have to go back in the basketball locker room." So we're sitting in the basketball locker room. They're like, "No, we're going to delay it for another 30 minutes, another 30 minutes." And I'm sitting here like, I'm going to pitch no matter what. Usually in this spot, they take the pitcher out because it's like, you don't want him to get hurt. I'm like, You're not taking me out of this game. Like, this is not happening. And 4 hours go by. And I'm like, yeah, you're not taking me out. So I warm up. I completely warm up all over again, did everything. And we come back out and it's 1, 2, 3. And we eliminate Vanderbilt, the number 4 team in the country. It's a story. Like I said, I'm going to tell my grandkids. It's like, yeah, it's just such a cool story just to send them home like that.
It always is those trials too, like the lightning, the weather delays, those things that happen before that really makes it you overthink okay, is this actually going to turn out the way I want it to?
Right.
The same thing happened with LSU during regionals and stuff.
Yeah.
They had the same kind of weather delay, and it was it can throw you off or it can make you play better when that's over.
Yeah, it's really funny. I didn't really realize how much that outing meant for me. Like when it came to the portal too, like a lot of these coaches are calling me, and Jay called me and he said, actually, we were in the middle of a rain delay at the same time as LSU was during their regional. So Jay was sitting in his office and he's watching this game and he's watching me pitch and he's like, who is this guy? Like, what the heck, And then of course, literally 24 hours later, I was in the transfer portal and Jay has me on the phone. But like a lot of these coaches, they call me and they'd be like, oh, we saw you pitch in the regional against Vanderbilt. I'm like, wow, I didn't know how that made as much of a difference as it did,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always those games that when you feel like nobody's watching, that's
Right.
when you always have to play with purpose and with heart because you don't know who's watching.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking about, the Cape Cod League and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people who are underdogs. They'll go to those kind of leagues and they may have not, had the most reps or they may not have the best, kind of stats before, whatever. But then they go to these things and the right MLB scout or whoever it may be is watching. And then their life changes. Like it's crazy.
For sure. Yeah.
Wow. So the Vanderbilt game happened. And then how many games was left after this happened?
So we actually had to play that night after that. So I think the game started at 2:00 against Vanderbilt and it ended at 9 with the 4-hour delay. And then we had to play at 9:45 against Oregon in the regional championship. So we lost that game. And then our season was over. But, yeah, it was the longest night of my life. I was falling asleep on the bench in, the 8th inning of the Oregon game. I was so tired. My body was gassed. And, yeah, just a crazy night.
Yeah. Can you kind of talk about kind of just that exhaustion feeling that people maybe don't understand from, those innings, pitching, things like that?
Yeah. I couldn't stand up. I was trying to stand up on the bench, but I had to, lean over the bench and, just to hold myself up. My legs wanted to give way. I've never been that tired in my entire life by far. Yeah, it was nuts.
What are some of the ways that maybe you personally just, kind of recover? Obviously you stay hydrated. What's the meal that you always go for kind of thing?
Yeah. Meal wise, I just eat whatever I can after the game because you burn so many calories when you pitch. I have a kind of recovery method that I use kind of after the game. It's it's called stem. It just basically massages your arm and causes blood circulation to happen throughout your arm. And that's the big thing that I use. It helps me a lot. It's kind of the same routine that I do after every time because I'm a reliever. I have to pitch multiple times a weekend most of the time. And so I have to be ready to be able to bounce back a day later and be ready to pitch again.
Yeah. So if we talked a lot about baseball, and I'm sure a lot of people watching will obviously know you as a baseball player, and you know your stats, they know that you're a left-handed pitcher, all these things. But something more important that I want to touch on, kind of that we talked about, is the part that people don't know, which is the mental health part, and it's the emotions that the sport puts you through, and the not all glorious things you get to see, in this kind of world. So I know you have quite a story when it comes to the mental health and things like that. So would you kind of just talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I want to come on here and share my story because I'm sure there's a lot of people that have went through similar situations that, this could help them and how I kind of dealt with it. So yeah, I'll just go into kind of my story. So it kind of started a year and a half ago for me. I was in a very long-term relationship that I decided to end with a girlfriend, and within the same week, obviously that's a big decision, being with somebody for that long. I decided, to end things, and that was difficult. But then within the same week, I had a major shoulder injury that put me out for 3 to 4 months. So 2 big hits in the same week. When somebody thinks about if you're playing in a sport, and something happens off the field, you think, okay, I'm just gonna forget about it, use my sport as a distraction. That's kind of the way that people distract themselves from this. I didn't have that. I had the 2 things that I were big in my life at the time taken away from me in 1 week, and it really hit me hard. I'd never been hurt before like that, and for a long period of time. And I really, I got really depressed. I didn't really know what to do. I kind of pushed away some people in my life that were there to help me, and just out of kind of anger at being hurt at the same time and not really knowing what to do. And And being a student athlete, it's even harder. You have to worry about, rehab, you're lifting still, and then you have to worry about school at the same time. Like I said, it's not as easy, or it's a lot easier at LSU than it was at Xavier. So I had a lot of stuff going on with school at the same time. So yeah, I just went down a really dark path. I just I wasn't really enjoying life at the time. And, I really found my way of getting through it was leaning on people around me. After a few months of going through this, I said, I'm kind of tired of, hating myself and, not being happy. So I found somebody that was in the same situation as me, one of my best friends at my old school. And I just talked to him, I opened up, and it was something that really helped me, to understand that, okay, I'm not alone in this. He's going through the same thing. And it just made the world a difference for me. So that's what I'd say for anybody going through that same situation. It's just reach out to people, reach out to your loved ones. I talk to my mom. My mom's somebody who's, always, I think your mom's like your best, advice person to go to. She was a big helper in me, and just understanding that, life isn't always perfect. Your son's not always perfect. He's going to be going through some stuff. And yeah, that was big, just opening up to people. So that's what I'd say is giving advice to somebody that would be going through that right now, especially, long-term injuries. Those are difficult. I love baseball more than anything in my entire life, and to have it taken away from me is like heartbreaking. So that's kind of my story and how I got through it. And I'm way better. Like I say to people, I had the best year of my entire life this year because of, that person that I used to talk to and the people around me in my circle,
I love how, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. It takes courage, and it takes you bringing up a part of your past that sometimes it's heavy, and
yeah,
it can cause kind of, you have to rethink about those moments, which is not something people really like to do. So thank you.
yeah,
But I love how you bring up community, because
Mhm.
I think so many people, where they'll go wrong is they'll isolate themselves, and
Yeah,
isolation does nothing. Like you think it's helpful during it, but isolating, it makes you feel even lower. And personally,
yeah,
when I think about it,
Mhm.
um, because I think also it's just a part of college. It's so many new
Right,
things. It's new people, new environment, and then it's losing people, and losing. You went from this relationship, and you're like, okay, well, fine, the relationship's gone. Then I have
Mhm.
baseball, but then you don't
Yeah,
have baseball, and then you're like, now where do I lie? And also,
exactly.
where do I put my identity, kind of thing? Because a lot of
Mhm.
athletes deal with identity problems, and they think that their sport is who they are, but
Right.
it's not. Like, that ultimately
Yeah.
it's who they play. And
Mhm.
yeah, no, having a good set of even 2 to 3 friends. Like, you don't have to be
Yeah.
friends with the whole team,
Yeah.
but
Exactly.
you know what I mean?
Yep. For sure. Yeah, and you can't always be like. I think the thing that I struggled with the most is I was always that guy that was just happy all the time. The guy that showed up and everybody could like, sometimes pick on him, but he's gonna be like the happy, like go lucky guy. And for me, like I always, while I was going through that, I always, stayed that person because I didn't want people to look at me in a different way if I was, you know, not, happy all the time or had that smile on my face. So, obviously I think there's a point where you can do that, but there's sometimes where it's like you can't do it on your own, like you said. You know what I mean? I would have never been able to recover the way that I did and, be where I'm at today without the help of people around me, you know.
Yeah, the happy part, it's
Mhm.
always those people that always look so happy and
Yes.
like you have it all together that are ones that really are hurting the most. And you
Right.
can't tell because social media is such a highlight reel.
Exactly.
And
hmm
I just think it's a trap. Like, social media
hmm
sometimes is, because you can see all these perfect moments and these highlights in these people's lives of like these really good games, really good moments, but you don't actually see what they're going through. And
Yeah.
people will compare themselves to people like, oh my gosh, I wish I had her life or his life. And then
hmm
you're like, you don't even know what's happening. And like,
Right.
it just goes to show that like social media is so fake.
Yeah. For sure. Yes, I totally agree.
So community is obviously very important to you. So I know that's something you probably were looking for when you came
hmm
to LSU.
Yeah.
What has that been like?
Yeah. Well, I came to LSU knowing one person, Caleb Appleby, and Unfortunately, he's no longer on the team, but I knew him when I came here, and that was one thing that was like very comforting to me, like knowing somebody there. And because when you go in the portal and you talk to all these schools, sometimes the coaches are just going to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And I knew that, having somebody at the school that could be honest with me about the situation on the team, like how's the team? Are the guys good? Like, how are the coaches? Are they honest with you? Like when he got recruited here, did they tell you the truth when you got there? And that was like it's trust. I think that more than anything, and being able to trust your teammates. We do a thing in our locker room where we basically like share whatever we want to know, like whatever's on our mind, and that's something that I love. Like you can be honest with your teammates. If you know like something personal about them, you're gonna really trust them more. If you put yourself out there as well, knowing that they're not going to say anything about share it outside the locker room or anything like that. I think that the team's such a a family. That's the way I like to put it. It's a family driven team, and I think there's I had that at my old school too, and it's even more like comforting to come into a new school and kind of be accepted.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize why LSU is so successful. And I just talked to a beach volleyball player about this last week about how LSU is not just successful because they have all of these trophies and all these great players and all these things. LSU is successful because they work together as a team.
Yeah.
And so many players, they'll try to take the glory for themselves and like, how can I? But there's no I in team. And I feel like so many people, especially in the SEC, hot take, but they will. They will look for the ways to, like make them like be the like, oh, I'm the guy who you need to pay attention to kind of thing, because they ultimately, where they want to go. They want to go to the draft, and they are thinking their mindset of like, well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's me going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think baseball is such a great like example of this. And like for me, I'm a reliever. So the starters, most of the time, the starter isn't going to pitch 9 innings, right? He can't do it all himself. Like he needs somebody else to come in there. And that's just the way I like to think about it. Like, whoever pitches for us on Friday nights is going to need me to come in after the game, or need somebody to come in after the game that he trusts. And I don't know, like I love that about baseball. If there's somebody comes running out of the bullpen for you and you're all excited because that guy's going to give everything he's got and you trust that guy. That's what I love about baseball.
Yeah. I mean, being a reliever, it's obviously the coach trusts you enough to finish the job that's been started. And so obviously that to you and to itself is just a testament to what, Coach Jay has kind of trust in you, because it's like I said, you can, have a start pitching where it's going really good and things like this, but anything can change at any moment. I feel like people forget that in any inning, it doesn't matter unless it's like a blowout. Then okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of times it's not, especially when it comes to SEC. I mean, obviously I know this is going to be your first season, but like the SEC is a very hard conference. That's why it's because there's so much like want, you know what I mean? All these players playing for these big teams. It's all about who wants it more. It's not about who's the best. And I think actually Coach Jay says all the time, talent is important to me. All these things when it comes to being able to be successful on the field is very important to me. But he also talks about how the most important thing to me really is though, who are those guys off the field? Like, what is their integrity like? What is their personality like? And that's something that LSU has too, because it's one thing to be the successful person, but if you're not nice to people, or you're not likable, or you're just, like, oh, I'm better than you kind of mindset, like coach wants that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. It's such a team mindset for sure.
So when you were dealing with, the transfer portal, and you were, you got the call from LSU, I'm not sure if I asked you, but when Coach Jay called you, did you have any second thought if you were going to go there?
So yeah, it all happened in one like night. So people don't really understand what the portal is. Like you go in, and I got an email like 45 seconds after I got the email that I was in the transfer portal from another school.
Can you talk about the portal a little bit? I mean, like the parts that are legal.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Yeah, so basically you go in the portal, like you have to talk to your coaches at your school that you're leaving, and then you talk to the compliance people at that school, and they, have to watch like a 15-minute video, and then you go into the portal, you get this email, it says, congrats, you're in the portal or whatever. Maybe not congrats if it's coming from the old school, but
Yeah.
and then it immediately just chaos ensues. Like you're getting calls, one after the other after the other. I think within the first 30 minutes, I was on a call with somebody for like that 30 minutes, and I got like 8 phone calls that I had to decline while I was on the phone with the school. Like it's just crazy, and that's like this is like there's a lot of people that have different experiences. Depends on what school you're going out of. Like depends on how you played at that old school. But this is kind of like my experience, and yeah, it's just nuts. Like it's all crazy. So like I wasn't like set in stone on LSU on the first day because like obviously I'm like I need to process all this, right? Like I have teams that are telling me like, can we fly up and come meet with you? I'm like, I'm driving home tomorrow. Like no, I can't. So yeah, my experience was crazy. Like I drove from Cincinnati, which is where Xavier is, to Minnesota back home, and that's a 10-hour drive, and I spent 8 hours of that on the phone with different schools. Yeah, and it's like a lot of it's like they called me the night before, but like I needed to go to bed, so like I just text them, I'll call you back tomorrow. Like, so I call these schools back. Then it's like, okay, I need to figure out. I just talked to 50 schools. I need to narrow it down to like 10. So like then it's a bunch of narrowing down, like talking to people that kind of know stuff about certain schools, and like basically, do you know anything that can cross them off the list? Basically, like how do I narrow this down? Narrow it down to like 10 schools, and it's like, okay, this is like 2 days later. Like, okay, I need to narrow it down to 5 schools, and then it's like, okay, I need to figure out when I take some visits to these schools because my mom was like, you're not committing unless we visit there. I'm like, all right, mom, like fine, okay, and yeah, and I think another thing is like commonly perceived by people, out in the world is like, okay, these guys are in the transfer portal, they're getting offered $50,000 to go to this school. Like that's just not how it works. Like that's maybe not baseball for sure. I don't know about football or whatever. Like buying players in football might be a thing. I'm not sure. But baseball wise, it's not like that. You're just getting a certain amount of scholarship to the school. And for me, I narrowed it down to, basically I've talked about this before on different spaces. I've said it was between like LSU and Tennessee. I took my 2 visits. I took my visit to LSU and I went to the Super Regional against Kentucky, and that was unreal. I was there. There's 15,000 people screaming and chanting. I'm like, this is crazy. They're reacting to every pitch. There's students in right field just going nuts. I'm like, okay, this place is amazing. Like, what the heck? Like, you see it on TV, and they're like, I'm like, this is way better than TV. Like, oh my God. And then I went to Tennessee, and my mom wanted me to see Tennessee and make sure that, it was in the possibility still. Visited Tennessee, and then I committed to LSU about a week, 5 days later. Yeah, it was just crazy for me. Yeah, just a nuts experience. And yeah, I'd do it again. It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing about LSU, like I will argue till the day I literally die with anyone, is that LSU's fan base is the best fan base in the entire SEC.
Yeah.
I believe that wholeheartedly because LSU travels. Like it's not just we're here for home games. Like we will go, like you saw Omaha. Like Omaha have LSU fans. And it's like win or lose, we're there too. There's some fans will go when it's just, oh yeah, they're winning or they've won 2 games in a row kind of thing. But it's like you got to be there through all of it. You can't be there through the wins.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think obviously I'm glad you chose LSU.
Yeah.
But throughout this entire experience and maybe just entire baseball, career, what would you say the best lesson that you've learned from maybe a coach or a mentor is?
Perseverance. Tell the story all the time. I was my first year as a freshman. Like I said, I wasn't very good when I got there. I didn't travel. I wasn't on the travel roster for the first 2 weeks of the season. And that broke me. Like I was, that was kind of like the lowest point of my career. And the coach at Xavier basically told me, hey, like, if you want a chance to play this year, you got to work for it, and some people, when they get told something like, or get denied something, they sit down and accept failure. that's something that I didn't do. Like I continued to work hard, and by the end of the year, I was in a very big role on the team. So I think that was a really like big tipping point in my career. Like I could have just packed it up and said, okay, like I'm not going to do anything with baseball because I'm not playing. Like they don't even think I'm good enough to be at the game. And yeah, so that was a big like lesson for me, is persevering through something and through that experience. And then obviously being hurt for 4 months, I had to persevere through that, and come back from injury and end up, having the season I did last year. If it wasn't for, keeping a positive mindset about, through my rehab. And yeah, that's for sure. Like my biggest lesson that I've learned.
Yeah, it's definitely about being optimistic and not being pessimistic and having like the woe me mindset kind of in you, because a lot of people see failure as like they failed, but failure isn't necessarily failure. That is just a way to grow. Like that is taking it as a lesson. And so that's awesome that you did that. And that's just, yeah, I'm just super glad that we got to come on here and kind of talk about everything. And obviously baseball starts February. So where can people come watch you guys play? When's the first game?
Yeah, we play at home. I think it's like February 15th against VMI. That's our first VMI. Yeah, VMI. I said that. Yeah, that's right. That's our opening. We play at home the first 6 games, I think.
Yeah.
We do play Xavier this year. Yeah,
Whoa,
in March.
that's big. That's huge.
Yes. I did know that. before I came to LSU that was on the schedule. But yes, we do play them. It's in March, I believe, like March 8th. We play them in a 3-game series at home, so that should be fun. So that's I'm looking forward to that, to see some of my old friends. But
that's gonna be a cool moment for you.
It's gonna be very weird, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Justin. I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this episode. You guys could resonate with something that Justin said. And thank you again. And yeah, thank you for Erie Insurance for partnering with us on today's video.